I could have worked it out. I just thought, as soon as I saw the .com was taken, I lost interest. And thought to myself, I better stop saying tick face.
Yeah, really.
Hello and welcome to episode 268 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast, a proud member of the Marketing Podcast Network. Hope you're well and staying as sane as you feel you need to be. I'm your host, Ian Truscott. I'm not a rock star, but I am a CMO, and on this podcast, I chat with a band of marketing chums who share their marketing street knowledge, which I hope will bring out the rockstar marketer in you. This week, Jeff Clark and I continue with the topic of a CMO's first 90 days, stepping through each of our 5 marketing fundamentals. Today, we're focusing on the campaign. But first, we need to pay the bar tab. I'll be back in a moment.
We'll be right back. After this word.
We'll be right back.
After this word. We'll be right back.
Raise the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more to reach the professionals who are more likely to find your ad relevant. Plus, with 1 billion members on LinkedIn, that means you'll have access to 130 million decision makers and 10 million C-level executives. That's a lot of millions of the right people. Get started today and see how you can reach the right buyers with LinkedIn's enhanced targeting tools. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Go to linkedin.com/MPN to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/MPN. linkedin.com/MPN. Terms and conditions apply.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Hello, Ian. Welcome to the Rockstar CMO studio.
Thanks, mate. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's we're having really nice sunny spring weather here in the Western Massachusetts, and so after we're done here, I might hoof it for a walk.
Nice. Yes, we've been having some nice spring weather too, and this time our weather report is a bit closer because we're recording this on Tuesday, and this will go live on Wednesday. So
so we may still have nice spring weather tomorrow.
Yeah, we had same with us, and I did a lot of writing today, and also a board. I was writing a board report as well. All the joys of self-justification. Yeah, but it was in the sunshine, so much nicer place to spend the time than sitting indoors. All right, mate. So this week, social. So that's our first agenda item. The weather done. So what are we going to chat about? Well, what we promised last week. We're going to continue down. Everything's a bloody rabbit hole with us. I don't know what I'm going to say continue, but we're going to continue to look at the first 90 days of a CMO's tenure. If the listeners, have been listening to the last few episodes, you know that we kicked off this series. And we've been working through our 5 effing marketing fundamentals, which are the master plan, the knowledge, the story, the campaign, and the machine. And this week we've come to the 4th of those, the campaign. I've got quite a long preamble here, haven't I, Jeff? But just as as we say, actually, since we did the first 2, which was the master plan, the knowledge, I think we've recognized that the first 9 days is a lot of listening. So the focus isn't on those 2 areas and then putting the story together. So, and to quote our ebook, this is an opportunity to promote the ebook that you can find on our website, rockstarcmo.com/5. The first three fundamentals are primarily inputs to when and how you communicate to your customers and prospects. And this fundamental, the campaign, is where the rubber hits the road as you use that insight and content to engage with the relevant customer-centric campaigns. Straight from the ebook there, mate.
Awesome.
So, and
Who wrote that? That is like just great prose.
I know, it's slick, isn't it? It's like we've done this marketing thing before. And last week we were in my wheelhouse of content marketing, and I think campaign is very much your expertise from your work at Sirius and Forrester and some of the discussions we've had on this. So, what say you, Jeff?
Well, with as you noted, with the planning, the research, and the story in hand, the campaign is the CMO's path to connecting with the buyers and starting to put, as the basketball cliche is, points on the board. Mm-hmm. Maybe they use that in football and other sports as well. But just to refresh listeners on what we mean by campaign is that we mean like an integrated set of content and tactics that are focused on a distinct customer need of a buying segment or segments. So as an example, if you sell something like digital asset management, there's a defined buying need for that across a broad set of businesses for storing, organizing, retrieving content, and that could be agencies, marketing departments, design engineering firms. All should be or could be sub-targets under your campaign for how you help manage content. So the challenge for, the CMO in the first 90 days is you're just getting started. So, you don't want to take a fire, aim, ready approach to campaigning. So in the first 90, I think, we'll be thinking the most about the ready and the aim parts of campaigning and perhaps, pulling off a quick win if the team's ready.
Yeah, and that's I'm glad you did that. I meant to ask you actually, because we often come back to this definition of what a campaign is, right? So, and I think it's so often that, and we talk about this all the time, isn't it? It's not like the tick face strategy, or it's not just that we need more video or any of that stuff. This is the broader thing we want to tell the world, right? So yeah.
And remember, anyway, tick face is a registered trademark for Ian Truscott.
Actually, we talked about this. I think it was last week, and then I went and looked it up, and it actually exists as a thing. It is an existing. Somebody already has the .com, and it is an existing thing. I don't.
Oh my God!
I couldn't quite work out what the thing did, but it certainly. I could have worked it out. I just thought as soon as I saw the .com was taken, I lost interest. And thought to myself, I better stop saying tick face.
Yeah, really.
But anyway, back to the ebook. We discussed 5 steps. So, Jeff, why don't you get the ball rolling? What's the first one?
Focus on a customer need. I mean, that's the first, fundamental of campaigning is like, what's the theme, the account segmentation? How do you build your story? And starting with an idea that you're talking to the customer's needs. So it's not product first, it's your needs first. So, the first step that I recommend for CMOs is to kind of review the campaigns that are in motion and determine, are we talking to customers' needs? Because this is typically a fault of many marketing organizations, and are those campaigns they're running, are they too tactical? Or the themes not speaking to needs? Or the channels they're using where buyers actually do go for information? Or is it just like the favorite place? We get a great deal from tech this, tick face that. So that's where we're putting our ad dollars.
Yeah.
So from the CMO's early research, they should get a kind of a good read, a gut feel on this. And the reason to do this first is that, you need to totally reorient, or you may need to totally reorient your team's campaign approach, which is not, it's not like a simple, let's sit down at the whiteboard and figure this out. So it may take more research and testing to do this, but it's like you want to get an idea early. Are we on the right track? Do we need to do a little course correction? Or do I need to hit, reset and start over?
Yeah, that was the question I was going to ask you about this actually, because the first 90 days of this campaign thing, as you say, is just when we get to this sort of campaign and we get into the detail, you're really trying to see what's working, see what's not working, see what needs to be done. Is your normal advice to new CMOs to take a kind of a cautious approach and make iterative changes? The whole we're flying the airplane, we're fixing the airplane while it's flying, or building the airplane while it's flying, or is there a good case to say, look, let's just stop this shit and then let's start again?
As you were asking that question, it reminded me of the STARS model that we've talked about, which is when the CMO comes in, what phase is the company in? Is this a turnaround? Is this and of course now I can't remember what all the stars, what all the acronym stands for. But, let's say, if it's a turnaround, or, you're redefining yourself, and it's like, well, maybe it's like, let's stop and press reset. But, typically you don't want to, unless you're like scrapping the team and totally starting over, rehiring people, you don't want to, demotivate people. There's activity that's going on. It's probably generating some sort of positive outcomes. So it's better to take the more evolutionary, cautious approach. But again, I think this is like one of those things that the CMO definitely needs to understand within the first 90 days, because his colleagues will be saying, okay, so what are you going to do with marketing? It's like, we're going to wait and see how the year wraps up, and then I'll think about it. That usually doesn't fly.
Well, the money flies out the door.
Money flies out the door.
Yeah.
So speaking of money flying out the door, I think you're going to tee up item number 2.
Yes, I will. Yes. So item number 2, and I think as I was looking at this, and we were talking before we press record, is a lot of what we talk about are just the basic fundamentals of B2B marketing, isn't it? And each of our recommendations, none of these things are like some kind of quick hack or quick fix, right? It's like, these are the fundamental things. So it'll come as no surprise to anybody listening that we need to determine what the business goals are for this campaign, right? So whether you're, as I keep talking about, growing awareness, building trust, or contributing to revenue, whether you're creating which part of art you're creating, and that's kind of like the broader topic we covered in the knowledge and the master plan, right, is understanding at that level, and that's the most important part of the first 90 days, isn't it? To understand the business goals, get that alignment, have it in the language of the rest of the C-suite. So in some ways, I was thinking this step in the campaign planning might sound obvious or redundant. Of course, you've already determined your business goals should come in your first 90 days. But this, I think, this sort of taking a step, and I think it's part of this evaluation that you just said, Jeff, is you've got to have a sort of framework for saying, should we be doing this? And one of them is, does this ladder up to our goals? Is this actually going to create more awareness, more revenue, more trust, or whatever model that you've chosen, right? And also, like, I think if you establish that framework and those guardrails, then and as we've already discussed lots of times, not all campaign ideas originate in the marketing team, right? Somebody comes in with the equivalent of the 2025 in-flight magazine and just learn about something. And we need to establish gates in our process. So we need to ask the question, does this create art, or does it do our business goals? So I think that's that step, isn't it, when we're evaluating the campaigns in the first 90 days?
I think you've one of the things you've underscored is it's really good that most airlines these days are not putting out magazines so that our bosses don't get, bad ideas.
Was that the reason?
Could be. Well, it's probably because it's too expensive for the airlines.
Oh, of course. But I like this idea that it's basically a cabal of marketers joined together and got tired of having the proverbial in-flight magazine slapped on their desk.
We rebelled against in-flight magazine.
We rebelled against them in campaign. Yeah, anyway, carry on.
Yeah. So, hopefully, the CMO is getting a firm grounding on what marketing's overall goals are, and doing the laddering process. Here's what the business's goals are based on what we're trying to accomplish overall. How's marketing supposed to help that? And then, you got to ladder that down to your campaign. So if my overall goals are more on the revenue than the trust and awareness, then it's like, well, what are we doing, to generate and impact that revenue? And does the work that the campaigns are doing, does that add up to what marketing's overall goals are? Because really the campaigns are how everything else you've been doing up to this point in terms of everything up to the planning and executing the campaign has been kind of prep work. The campaign is what actually generates the outcomes.
Absolutely.
And so, how are the campaigns? Are they guided by that? Are they off the mark? Are they? And this is not. I mean, this may sound like, a simple motherhood and apple pie point to make, but it's like so often there's just a big disconnect between business goals to marketing goals to what marketing is actually executing in support of those goals.
Yeah.
So this is not something that should be, basically just stepped over.
Absolutely. And this is the opportunity. I mean, it's not just, like you say, it's not just the business and marketing that gets disconnected. Sometimes the marketing gets disconnected, right? In much larger teams. And I've worked with organizations that are very much in that situation. So that's our second, and we should really, I guess, crack on a little bit here. So we've determined our business goals and we decided we're going to focus on our customer needs. And we now need to start to put this campaign thingy together, or at least look at the structure of what we got. So where do we start, Jeff?
Create the campaign team. So just by definition, multifaceted, multi-channel, programs, it's a collaborative process that's going to cut across teams. Whether you're setting up, your marketing team to be in the functional, comms, digital, field, blah, 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 operations, or whether you've got some other, way like, supporting business units, supporting product divisions, is that the campaign's going to cut across that hierarchy, if you will. So, and CMOs often focus on staffing in the first 90 days. The great thing about this in terms of focusing on a campaign is that since these tend to be, cross-functional collaborative teams, they're kind of virtual things that you can create it, based on the focus on the buyer need. You can create it. If it doesn't work, you can reorganize it, because you're not necessarily changing anybody's specific, job functions. You're trying to pull people that have these different skills and functions onto a team. Now, you may need to hire somebody who's a team leader. That may or may not exist on your staff. Some kind of business-oriented, savvy marketer who knows how to manage a cross-functional team. Can coordinate campaign execution. Can work with some perhaps colleagues that are in sales and other functions, because they may need to get input from those functions. They may need to pull people from like sales or sales ops onto the team. So anyway, I think this is something that whether you've actually built the team in the first 90 days or you've developed the concept, because you're going to need to probably sell people, not just the campaign team members, but whoever you're drawing from. Like if you're drawing some people from sales and sales ops onto this team, you're going to need to do some selling before the team actually gets formed.
Yeah, and I was also thinking about another. I mean, we haven't got time to go into it here, but there was also that concept of frontline marketing, wasn't it, that we were talking about a while back? That also came out of Forrester, and that was quite interesting because I wrote an article about it, and then I actually had a couple of Forrester analysts reach out to me to discuss, my experience of this, which was quite nice. And I think that we can, like you say, get a little bit hung up on org chart and who reports to who, whereas actually this is more of a sort of a tiger team setup, isn't it? You need a leader within that tiger team, but they don't need to necessarily be a man manager of that group.
Exactly. And you're right, tiger teams, frontline marketing teams, campaign teams, sometimes these are just subtle differences in how you define cross-functional collaboration.
Yeah, maybe we should talk about this sometime, about the optimum marketing team, because I think it is a matrix, isn't it? Because you do need that subject matter expertise within your campaigns, but you also want to cluster those people together because they learn from each other, and you need a leader of that complete function. Anyway, yes, no, very good. So we're creating the campaign team. So that's cool.
So we've got the buying needs, the goals.
Yeah.
We're forming the team. So Ian, over to you for what's next.
Well, this one, I think, whilst I have it, I think this was very much inspired by a conversation between us two. And I think about something that maybe you had talked about at Forrester and Sirius. And this is about the tactic mix. So this is, I think, a good point at which we differentiate between what a campaign is and what a tactic is, right? And then this is thinking about where do buyers go for their information? What type of information are you looking for? The real basics, like I was saying, no quick hacks here. How do they like to engage? So since we published the 5F in marketing fundamentals and these 5 steps, we've actually created the amped buyer's journey that people can also find on our website. And we discussed it in episode 254, which is an amalgam of a number of best practice ideas floating around and all the things that we've seen in the billions of years we've been doing this, right? So I can't help but mention that and use that as a touchstone here. But as you discuss, campaign's a bigger thing than single tactic. But we need to look at what all these tactics, how they fit in the buyer's journey. So it might be a LinkedIn advertising campaign is going to work really well at certain parts of the buyer's journey with certain kinds of buyers. But fundamentally, that's not the campaign. The campaign is how do we reach out to them, right? And I think that, to your point, we need to make that focus on what the buyer's need is, but specifically what's the need that's going to help them move along the journey? What's going to help them get a bit closer to us to making a decision? And whilst we did create a buyer's journey, AMPS, we recognize that people move in and out of those phases, up and down, or in and out all over the place, don't they, with these things? But this is what we need to figure out is what's the right tactic mix to get somebody, for example, to move from our muse or consideration phase to purchase, for example. So really be very specific about that, right?
So yeah, and as I don't know, I put this in the notes, but I feel awkward even saying it. Buyer's journeys definitely get us amped up because we use the AMPed acronym.
Yeah.
But seriously, it's like this is a key element for the CMO to drill down on when he's reviewing how the campaigns have been planned and executed so far. It's like, okay, does the team understand enough about buyer behavior to pick the right types of assets, the right way of engaging them, the tactic? Is it the right channel to engage them on? Where do they go? Where does that buyer go for information? And, have you put it into their vernacular, the way they speak? And if they've made that effort, then how are you measuring whether it's working or not? So, what kind of testing have you done, or what kind of review of the campaigns to say, because maybe, the CMO might come in and say, have you tried, whatever, have you tried TickFace? And they say, well, we tried TickFace last year and, it bombed on us. So we went to Facebook or TikTok. This is an area where inspection and how the campaign teams have been executing so far really will tell you a lot.
Yeah, I liked also what you said there about the content and the language in use, because if you look at the buyer's journey and your different personas on the different buyer's journey, our campaign will inform what we're trying to achieve and what we're trying to get across and the messaging we're trying to make. But it may be that different personas at different points of that buyer's journey are going to think about this differently. And I'd love to think of a really good example, but a finance person may have a very different view and a different terminology they use for solving the same problem or solving the same need that maybe the senior practitioner has or the technologist has, right?
Well, like the example I brought up at the beginning in digital asset management, an engineering firm is going to use different terms, have different the way their needs, even though the needs might be exactly the same, they're just going to express it differently. And they're going to go to different places for the information about what will help me solve this content management problem.
Yeah, it's true. And then if you look at not just within the industry, but within the same company, those benefits need to be expressed financially to some people. And then other people, it's just going to be, well, it just makes my life easier. And that's why I want it, because the thing we've got right now makes it harder. All that kind of good. Anyway, we're at risk of selling digital asset management solutions here, but that's 4 down. We've covered the needs, the goals, we've put the team together, and we've dug into the details of how this campaign will move our audience along the journey. So Bring it home. What's the final step, Jeff?
Determining ROI. So, the budget and the outcomes. So ideally, what a CMO would love to be able to do is to say, wow, I started working with this marketing team, and very quickly we figured out we're going to spend X amount of dollars, pounds or euros to get Y outcome. That's a measurable ROI, and I can report that back to you, next quarter or whatever. So this is something that you won't complete the exercise in 90 days, but first step would be to say, well, existing campaigns. So you're doing your review. So hey, what was the goal for those campaigns? How much did we spend? What were the outcomes? Were those outcomes we expected? Or can we actually report a return on investment? Because I've always said that it's very hard to have the return on investment on that that ad spend or that that tick face strategy that actually resonates with anybody above the management level, the manager level. So you gotta, if you're going to be talking about revenue awareness and trust, it's you got to take it up a notch. And a campaign that's focused on awareness, revenue, trust can actually help you, determine, or not determine, but not just determine, but actually report back on an ROI. And then lastly, when you're talking to the team, is what were the lessons learned from what we've executed so far? What have we learned? And one thing aside here is if you can't get a review like this because there's no data, there's lousy performance measurement practices, there's no one who wants to own up to the failures or whatever it is, then you've got a campaign design operations problem to solve. So there you go. So that's becomes your first order of business. But still, there's got to be lessons to learn. Even if it's just the fact that we don't have a needs-based campaign or messaging to work with, then that's what you want to find out. And I think this leads us very nicely, by the way, to our next CMO 90 Days discussion that we'll have, because we're going to be talking about the machine, which one aspect of the machine is how do you find out these things?
Yeah, look at you teeing up the next episode already.
I should have left that to you. Sorry.
No. I don't. This isn't a dictatorship.
Collaborative enterprise.
This is a democracy. I don't know if you're familiar with that over there anymore, mate. But you can say what you like. You can make decisions.
Yes, no, we're not. Yeah. I'm sorry if I didn't mean to step on your toes.
No, you're fine. I was marveling at your professionalism. I think so. We've been doing all the things. We've been promoting our ebooks. We're promoting the next episode.
Look at the old episodes. Gosh,
nearly 300 episodes in, and we're almost getting the hang of this thing. But anyway, let's get back to what you were saying about and that ROI thing. That ROI. I mean, isn't it just? It's like a microcosm of the 5 fundamentals just in this campaign thing, isn't it? And it's really what we're talking about is whether we're being effective with what's running at the moment, and that's both in terms of looking up at the goals and then how you're measuring whether they're really working against those goals. But the other problem, I think, and this will definitely be something we need to discuss, is how far do we go with this ROI and measurement stuff? Because at the moment, I think we're at a difficult point where the world believes that digital marketing is all measurable, and if you can't measure it, you shouldn't do it. But there's a lot of the dark funnel at the top, right? Where and place, and we still need to do that brand marketing, and it may be that the work that it takes to figure out whether that's effective is an ineffective piece of work to do, because you're just spending so much time on measurement that you won't get any marketing done, right? So I think that's an interesting topic. Maybe we'll go down one day. But next week, as you say, we'll discuss the 90 days. Anyway, it's up to me now, isn't it, to do a conclusion. So that was really what I was doing, wasn't it? So those are our 5 steps, which is a bit much the first 90 days. But I think in the first 90 days, the job to be done is to evaluate the existing campaigns against this framework criteria and get an idea of what is working in terms of delivering goals and what gaps we have in the current campaigns in terms of addressing the customer needs, corporate goals, and the entire buyer's journey. And as you said, then take a bead on whether we should take a read, a bead, or take something. So some American expression that I'm not used to using, and then say whether this is going to be a kind of a iterative process and we'll just tweak stuff, or whether there's things we need to stop completely and things we need to start afresh, right?
Exactly.
So that leaves us to our last agenda item, Jeff.
The song. Yeah. So this time, I in my search for a song, I kind of went. I took a different approach, and I came up with the song "Under the Pressure" by a group called the War on Drugs, or War on. I think I dropped the War on Drugs from 2014, and it happens to be one of my son's favorite bands. And so I said, well, what have they written about the topic that I could make some sort of connection? And, but, a CMO, first 90 days, talk about being under the pressure. So, one of the lines of the song is just try not to crack under the pressure.
Splendid.
And, we're giving CMOs the tips so that they don't crack under the pressure.
Yeah, nice. And I also like your way of understanding what is the cool kids are listening to these days by asking one of them.
Well, you got to ask a cool kid.
Yeah, I'm completely unfamiliar with this band and this song, but I did listen as part of the prep for this episode, and it's a 9-minute long song of which I will play a very
short segment.
Well, it's partially for copyright reasons. I try and just give the listener a little flavor of what we were thinking. Because otherwise you're going to get dinged, aren't you? But anyway, that's what we'll play out with, Under the Pressure by War on Drugs in 2014. And I think you've already revealed what we're going to do next week, Jeff.
Yes.
We're going to be back in the studio.
The Machine.
I'll speak to you then. Cheers, buddy.
Okay. Cheers.
Jeff, and that was my first experience of War on Drugs and Under Pressure. But let's hope in the first 90 days of a CMO, it's a bit less bleak. It is, after all, called the honeymoon period. And if you're interested in our 5 Fundamentals ebook, it's on the website ungated. Just visit rockstarcmo.com/5, the number, and you should be in. So that's a wrap on episode 268 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. Thanks to Jeff for his insight, and to you for putting your dime into your podcasting jukebox and jolliting along with us. I've been your host, Ian Truscott. You can find links to me, Jeff, and all the things we referred to there in the show notes on rockstarcmo.com, where you can also find our blog, newsletter, and all of our previous episodes. We'd love to hear from you, so please reach out via the website or LinkedIn. Just search Rockstar CMO and I'm sure you'll find us. But please mention you're a listener if you'd like to connect. Next episode of The Rose of Rockstar with Robert Rose will drop on Saturday. I'm looking forward to recording that with him on Friday. And Jeff and I will finish this series next Wednesday. Hope you join us for both of those here on Rockstar CMO FM.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Robbie Samuels hosts the On the Schmooze podcast. Robbie, tell listeners what to expect from the show.
Since 2015, I've interviewed entrepreneurs who overcame challenges to achieve success in their field or industry. Tune in to On the Schmooze to listen as I ask deep questions to elicit untold stories about leadership and networking.
And where can people subscribe?
Find the show at ontheschmooze.com or on marketingpodcast.net, or just search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard them. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.